PseudoPod is made entirely by humans in service of an ancient being wider than time and older than hope. She's nice. Says hello. Welcome to PseudoPod Towers. Get comfy. Find a cushion to hide behind. You're going to need it. PseudoPod, episode 1035, 26th June 2026. This week's story, Interstate Mohinis by M.L. Krishnan, narrated by Suna Dasi. Hosted by Alasdair Stuart, with audio by Chelsea Davis. Welcome to PseudoPod, the weekly horror podcast. I'm Alasdair, your host, and this week's story, Interstate Mohinis, was originally published in Diabolical Plots in June of 2023. M.L. Krishnan originally hails from the coastal shores of Tamil Nadu, India. She has been awarded fellowships and residencies from Tin House, McDowell, the Carnegie Corporation, Malay Arts, and the Clarion West Writers' Workshop. Her stories and essays have appeared or are forthcoming in Strange Horizons, Black Warrior Review, Diabolical Plots, and elsewhere. Her work has been anthologized in the year's Best Dark Fantasy and Horror, Brave New Weird, Afterlives, the year's Best Death Fiction, Wigleaf Top 50, Best Microfiction, Best Small Fictions, and many more. Your narrator this week is the amazing Suna Dasi. Suna is an Indian-Dutch musician and writer who studied and worked in theatre and dance in the Netherlands. Performing has taken her all over the world, and with her wife she is a live-in member of the Lodge Arts Collective. She records and performs in Ebb, fronted by Texan prog rock artist Erin Bennett and all-women metal outfit Crow. Suna is currently working on her poetry collection and first novel, and in 2017 she was nominated for a BSFA Short Fiction Award. As ever, our audio wizards are either Graham or Chelsea, and this week it's Chelsea, and I'm in the host spot. So, join us, friends, for Prey and Predator, and the truth of memory.
Interstate Mohinis by M.L. Krishnan. Narrated by Suna Dasi. In the way of death runs the Vaitarani River. We are flayed open to its woe. We are always aware of its currents in gurgling lungfuls of unease. Time spun in recursive loops since I died in a scream of metal and flame and asphalt on the Partibanur State Highway. There was no cremation. What could they consign to the flame? A scorched knob of my torso? My jawbone, still glued with tissue? A lone filling snugly hidden within a lone tooth? Sometimes I dreamed about flowing water. About where I would be, not here, anywhere but here, if my body had survived the accident, mushed but still recognizable, with its vestigial humanness that demanded respect, especially in death. My ashes would have been tossed into an ocean or a river in a coursing procession of night-blooming jasmine garlands, women who keened and thumped their chests, and drunken louts who gyrated around my urn until they foamed at the mouth, until they collapsed in exhaustion or pleasure. When I first began feeding, I wondered if I was a Vetala or a Pishacha, but I felt no urge to sway from bile trees or dart into a hedge of tatapu with its ray-toothed flowers. Besides, I did not have an appetite for birds or small rodents. I only hungered for certain kinds of men. Maybe I was a Mohini. Still, I had no idea of what that involved. My life before death kaleidoscoped in and out of my field of vision, shimmery and indistinct. My knowledge of Mohinis was from B-grade movies that appeared in torn lesions of memory, of sullen heroines with thick coal-rimmed eyes and billowing hair who always wore chiffon saris, leaving little to the imagination. Their dark areolas were signal flares, beckoning the film hero through transparent fabric. And they always ambushed him along a quiet road, devouring the hero in more ways than one. I did not know how to seduce the men I wanted to eat, but they came willingly enough as soon as they recognized a somewhat feminine shape under my soiled clothes. The lorry drivers who were lean and sharp as machetes, with their drug-glazed eyes and arak breaths. The college students tweaking on tabs of acid who slid off their motorcycles and into my arms. The married men in respectable cars who were the easiest, who didn't even pretend to notice the windshield wiper piercing the lave-rimmed void in my neck. I gorged on them all, sucked the marrow out of each knuckle and each toenail until they were reduced to papery, crumbling husks. For a brief moment, my hunger would lessen. My skin felt supple, but I distrusted this newness, this heft, because I was nothing. A nothing death for a nothing life that I couldn't even fathom. So I walked and fed along the highway, along this momentary emptiness. This was all I knew. The Vaidarani yawns into a chasm of blistering liquid. We have valleys to ascend, a darkness like pitch cupping our throats. We drink. 3 relevant details marked the day I first saw her. 1. I was irritated. I had just eaten a middle-aged auditor in a safari suit, a tuft of a man with an unnaturally distended face. His skin held the waxy quality of an ash gourd. He had grabbed my windshield wiper the moment I approached him, trying to nail me in place as he frantically undid my shalwar with his free hand. I snapped his neck clean in half and fed on his corpse in haste, before he inflated into a fleshy, putrescine balloon that squirted post-mortem gases and fluids everywhere. He tasted rubbery and sulfuric. 2. Post-feeding, I began to walk. I took my time on the Partibanur Highway corridor that yoked the big city with an industrial waste landfill, a polytechnic college that was also a homeopathic dispensary after sunset, and a shanty town that buzzed with a thriving opioid trade. Flyovers latticed the sky as far as I could see. This was a slim keyhole of space carved by rushing streams of traffic. And yet, shops and tiffin centres mushroomed out of necessity along the sides of the road. On this day I avoided the streetlights, only weaving through deepening puddles of dusk. I stopped behind the biryani centre, hoping to smell the food. Crescent moons of slippery onions, sizzling fat, goat carcasses hung from hooks arrayed across a tin roof. My efforts never amounted to anything. I could only smell my human prey right before I fed, their fear and lust coating my tongue in a gummy residue. I crossed the construction site, wadded between a fancy store and the biryani centre, where labourers were splayed atop one another in a ganja-induced fog. At least someone's having fun, I thought. Finally, I arrived at the Sri Anai fancy store that sold everything from hair clips to bluish-hued stage jewellery that glimmered in various states of oxidation, to jumper cables for car batteries, and even tickets to the latest political rallies that zigzagged through this area. I moved behind the store, where I melted into the gloom of the urine-soaked wall. Its surface was papered in flaking Kaniranjali posters, giant cartoon tears embellishing a printed photo of the newly dead, so every passerby could mourn the end of a stranger's life. I watched people mill in and out of the shop for a long time. As the night wore on, I became restless. 3. A sudden quietude. My irises cleaved with visions of a bloated river in spate, And just as quickly, a wall of heat sliced through the mist, chasing the images away, snapping me back into the here and now. And then I saw her, the beautiful one. A Benz pulled in front of the shop. She stepped out of the car in a sari that was bioluminescent, flashing green as she moved. A tight braid, sheathed in Nereum buds, swung down to her buttocks. Welts mapped the sides of her hips and circled around to her back. Her left eye was a faceted ruby under the streetlight, burst capillaries tinting it red. As I watched her, my loneliness opened under my feet in a sinkhole, taking me unawares. At first I thought it might just have been my hunger, but it turned out to be something else entirely. The riverbank softens into caustic sludge. A forest winks on the far shore. The iron-leaved trees ring ceaselessly. From that moment onwards, I staked my days around the locus of her. My life had now bisected itself into two clean halves. The first, an endless conveyor belt of time and repetition and grasping men. And now, every moment attuned to the beautiful one's presence. I could not allow myself to believe that I would never see her again. Every day I tried to observe smudges of traffic for a gunmetal-hued Benz. Luckily, I did not have to work too hard. She had a routine, I soon learned. The beautiful one visited the fancy store twice a week. Her shopping done, she would glide into the cool tomb of the Benz and leave. But sometimes she would walk down to the biryani centre and order a packet of mutton trotters and rice. I ached for those moments when the night blinked to a standstill, the beautiful one sheathed in green silks, waiting for her food, almost immobile. I would dissolve into the long shadow of a concrete pillar at the construction site. I could have spent several lifetimes in that ribbon of time, of vehicles and mutton parts and the form of her illumined by headlights every time a car passed us by. And in those instances, I would always hear rippling water, a low hum that filmed over me. Some weeks, the beautiful one arrived at the biryani centre with a man. I soon realised that this was the man that owned the gunmetal Benz. Piecing together an overheard mosaic of conversations, I learned that he was an up-and-coming big man, a land mafia goon who also nurtured a fierce political will. With the beautiful one by his side, he would hold kangaroo courts for his oily sycophants after he had sated himself on flattery and food. He had a wife and 8 grown children. Big men always had perfect families, and the beautiful one was not his wife. Every time the big man visited the biryani centre with his entourage, he would be seated on a clean bench as befitting his status. His hangers-on arrayed themselves around his feet. He would then present a knotted length of fresh oleander to the beautiful one, his face slicked with anticipation. She would untie it gently. The big man would jerk her closer as she squirmed in his thick arm, as he bound and fastened the oleander around her hair. This was a regular show, a marquee-lit warning to his followers that were mostly made up of young men with hungry eyes and hungrier ambitions. A show to remind them that she was utterly off-limits, belonging only to him. She never spoke a word through it all. The first time the beautiful one saw me through the grease-grimed window pane of the biryani centre, she did not scream or flinch. She continued eating, a placid metronome of movement from hand to mouth. I had become careless, wanting a closer look, but I couldn't help myself. Her pale green sari faded white against a fluorescent lamp on the wall. Her neck shone purple with bruises. The big man was making a joke about her engorged lips, about his biting habit, about how he wanted to swallow her whole. "I do what I have to," he said. "If I want a midnight snack, I must eat." His sycophants laughed and hooted as if on cue. The beautiful one continued to eat in silence. She never looked away from me. As the night wore on, one of the hangers-on had whipped out a phone. Something about a cricket match. Vast liquid streams of money being moved around in gambling bets overtook the conversation. While the big man hissed threats and growled sequences of numbers into several cell phones, the beautiful one escaped onto the back porch to wash her hands. This was my chance. I swiftly emerged near the water drum. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Please, please don't be afraid, I'm sorry." "There you are," she said without surprise. "Valikaruta, does it hurt?" She gestured at my throat, the bent rod. I suddenly felt self-conscious. "No, not really." She smiled then. "Do you have a name?" "I don't remember." I also had one name, but he, and she pointed to the big man inside, gave me another. "Now surora ilai," I blurted. "I'm not alive." She looked at me for what felt like a long, unbearable flew of time. A glassy-skinned lizard darted across the floor. "I know," she finally said, and walked back into the biryani center. The moon is a thin, curved line over the way of death. A smile ripped from an unwilling mouth. The beautiful one and I started talking to each other. Our exchanges were quiet and unobtrusive while she waited alone in the semi-opaque dimness for her mutton trotters. No one seemed to notice. Once, she even offered to buy me food. "Oh, no, I don't. I can't eat this." She was thoughtful. "If you're dead, then you can eat rice?" "I'm not sure." At my grandma's funeral, I made elu sadam urundai, rolled bowls of black sesame rice. She spoke of her grandmother often, of how the old woman stubbornly refused to wear a blouse, choosing only to drape her sari on bare skin, of her saucer-wide earlobes that were adorned with dandati, earrings floating over her clavicles in tetrahedrons of gold, of how she meticulously prepared paella, a goat leg broth simmered for hours in coconut milk. "I used to hate it," the beautiful one laughed. I tried to hide my smile. "But this is what you always order." She told me that she had despised its viscid collagen taste, its phlegm-green hue. However, once her pati died, she began to crave its smooth pepperiness. Now, she ate it whenever she could. "It's okay, Ma," she said. "This is all I want to eat." In that moment, I understood the shape and contour of her particular craving for this dish. I wanted to tell her that my appetite was singular as well, that I could only consume one thing, that, like her, I was also bound to a hunger not of my choosing. "It makes sense," I said. Another night. The beautiful one pushed a steel tiffin box into my hands. Just try it. Later, I opened it when I was alone. Greasy, undulating mounds of black sesame rice spilled out of the container. I attempted to eat one, but it gummed over the section of the windshield wiper that cored my flesh. I coughed out what was left of the rice, and, as if on cue, flesh flies immediately glazed it in mucus. I closed the box tightly. I wanted to preserve its contents for as long as I could. I wanted to ask her if I could keep it, because it was hers, because it tethered me to her in a connective skein, a talisman for when she was gone. Maybe next time, I promised myself. A well of laments, a hillock, and a cascade of spear points. How do we rend ourselves asunder? The big man was angry. He twisted through the biryani centre in gales of unshed rage. Back and forth he loped, toppling chairs when his fury dribbled out of his mouth in expletives. No one dared to approach him. He crushed 3 cell phones in his fists. Fear sent his entourage skittering for cover. Investment failure. Land deal Portu. He is finished. CBI raid. I caught some murmurs from the sycophants. It appeared as though the big man had lost a lot of money. I did not care about the erratic ticker tape of his businesses or his ambitions. I only sought the beautiful one. I found her on the back porch of the biryani centre, leaning, as always, against a water drum. A motionless pillar wearing silence. Inside, the beatings began. The big man's anger had detonated at last. A sycophant lost an eyeball. Another one got his nose broken. A veshti-clad octogenarian tottered up to the big man and softly touched his arm. This was an expensive mistake. The big man broke a bench over the man's head. The octogenarian crumpled into a mess of flesh and exposed bone with an odd burbling sound. This was when the beautiful one decided to intervene. Decided to unsnarl the tangle of the big man's brutality somehow. Decided to drape herself over the octogenarian in response. Before I could stop her, before I could shield her from the unerring finality of the big man's fist, before everything, this night, the biryani centre, the gunmetal bents, the known arc of his violence, his hand sliced across her face. Once, twice, thrice. The beautiful one's body bent at an impossible angle and folded in on itself. Her teeth rattled out of her mouth in a gasping breath. I rushed over to her and pinched my way up her arms, her neck. I begged for a thrum, a pulse, its percussive hope. There was nothing. In that instant, madness undid me from the vacuum of survival. I scratched away my clothes and wailed until the tin roof peeled from the scaffolding. I leaped onto the big man's shoulders and held him still between my thighs. He continued to thrash with his bulk. I blurred into a wreath of hair as my jaw unhinged into his, as I impaled him in place with the windshield wiper, its usefulness finally telegraphing into view. A soupy, maggot-infested gush slopped around our feet. I was ravenous. But here, There was no polypeptide rush that seared my bowels with hunger, no apathy at the carousel of men that I usually fed on. Instead, my skin thrummed with newness, a fury lined with teeth. I took my time in consuming the big man, his innards roping over my knees in glossy coils as I slurped through every tendon and nail and gristle. I saved his hands for last. We bring no payment, no supplication, no penance. The opposite of the Vaitarani River cannot be seen. 12 suns glare overhead. At first, I was nothing. Then I felt the throb of something in me, someone even, in the presence of the beautiful one. And with her gone, I had heaved over the cliff face of nothings and somethings and someones all together. I crawled to her corpse and pulled it close, her skin to my skin. The big man's blood hammered inside the double-jointed cavern of my gaunt frame. I lay there for a long time, letting the beautiful one's body stiffen in my arms. Her anguish blushed into focus because I perceived her. Like tuning into the radio at the right frequency, the wavelets of our isolation looping into a mutual current of existence. A woman could succumb to a 5-lane mash of traffic, and people would continue to drift along their lives, her death a transient blip. Another woman sat, her skin strobing with wounds, and everyone pretended not to see. But I did. And the beautiful one had perceived me too. In that, we were one. At last the river arrived, as I knew it would. It coursed through my body in long, deafening sheets of sound. And then the heat, rupturing the eventide and the stars in the deepest dark as it split the night wide open across the waters. We waded into the boiling flood, the beautiful one and I. I held her corpse taut against mine. The river scoured away the last bits of us in burning rinds of flesh and hair. Marrow-laced foam filled my throat. It tasted of smelted copper ore, the embers of a long-ago life. It tasted of relief, maybe even joy, though I could not remember what that was anymore.
Some notes first about the protagonist of the piece, courtesy of Kat, our amazing editor. Mohini is the Hindu goddess of enchantment. She is the only female avatar of the Hindu god Vishnu and is portrayed as a femme fatale, an enchantress who maddens lovers and demons, sometimes leading them to their doom. Many different legends tell of her various exploits, including her famed encounter with the god Shiva. These tales relate, among other things, the birth of the god Shasta and the destruction of Bhasmasura, the ash demon. Mohini's main modus operandi is to trick or beguile those she encounters. The name Mohini comes from the verb root moha, meaning to delude, enchant, perplex, or illusion, and literally means delusion personified. Mohini also has an active history in the destruction of demons throughout Hindu texts. In the Vishnu Purana, Mohini defeats Bhasmasura, and in the prelude of the Romakiyan, the Thai version of the Ramayana, the demon Nontok is charmed and killed by Mohini Vishnu. Another South Indian legend about the demon Araka associates Mohini with Krishna, an avatar of Vishnu. Transgender Hitras consider Krishna Mohini to be a transsexual deity. One of the notes I made for this story was victim of survival. Survivor's guilt is real, and it's something which you don't notice arrive, and then suddenly it's all you can see. The sensation is like a weight in the backpack for me, something akin to depression, but flattened somehow. I have been, by every weight and measure, tremendously lucky, if one can be with survivor's guilt, to never have the level where you feel like your survival is something that needs to be rectified. For me, it's always more a nagging sense of absence, a missing tooth in the mouth of the world. Here, one of the many, many things Krishnan does beautifully is make that missing tooth a person, one aware of their absence, and worse, their distance, and worse even than that, their closeness to a world that's real and alive and intensely dangerous. One of the other notes I made was different kinds of predator, and this story is full of them. Criminal, personal, primal. Mohinis' active history in the destruction of demons. All of them in different ways desperate for control, all lying that they have it. All killing to maintain that lie, or to at least puncture it for one of their fellow victims, or travellers, or the only other people who understand what it feels like. Or who understand how different everything feels. But the line that breaks my heart here is the second to last thing I wrote down. In that moment, I understood the shape and contour of her particular craving for this dish. As I look 50 in the face and find myself delighted by how many smile lines it has, food and cooking are becoming more and more important to me. It's a hobby I will never monetize. It's a means of grounding myself physically that doesn't involve CrossFit, and the end results are usually great and often delicious. In the last few weeks, I've made spicy tomato jam, naan, lime and coconut donuts, old-fashioned donut cake, and a lot more. That naan I made with a rolling pin we inherited when my mum died. She'd barely ever eaten pizza, let alone curry as I understand it, but she baked her whole life. And every time I use it, I say thanks, Mum. The taste of the dish is the taste of my better memories of her, whatever the dish may be. That's the surface of this line for me, the understanding that a particular memory, a particular dish, can share and enhance another's presence in your mind. But the horror in the line in the story begins with the distance inherent in "I understood." Not for the lead, but something she understands. Knowledge granted by distance. Perspective granted by absence. My final note for this story is love like bloody-mindedness. The determination to honour who we love in the face of the impossible is the pillar so much is built on, from vengeance to memorial and to the final choice the main character makes. It's not enough. It's too much. It's enough to stop being a victim of survival, to step off the responsibilities of predation, to love bloody-mindedly. What a wonderful story. Thank you, everyone. On to the subject of subscribing and support. PseudoPod has long survived on donations alone, and even though there are ads now, subscribing through our Patreon remains the best way to ensure we can keep bringing you one story told well. And if you subscribe at the $7 tier, you can get rid of the ads again. So, if you would like to support what we and the rest of Escape Artists do, please join our Patreon at patreon.com/EA Podcasts. And please, do that through your browser. That way you avoid paying the App Store fees. And that means the world is $7 and change less dystopianly cyberpunk. If you would prefer another method, there are details for supporting us via Twitch, Amazon Prime, Ko-fi and PayPal on escapeartists.net, or you can reach out directly by email at donations@escapeartists.net with any questions and someone will get back to you. If you can't afford to support us financially, then please consider leaving reviews of our episodes or generally talking about them on whichever form of social media you're attempting to dissociate through this week. We've had some success with Blue Sky in that regard, and you can find us there at pseudopod.org. If you like merch, you can also support us by buying hoodies, t-shirts and other bits and pieces from the Escape Artists Void Merch store. The link is in various places, including our pinned tweet. PseudoPod is part of the Escape Artists Foundation, a 501c3 non-profit, and this episode is distributed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Download and listen to this episode on any device you like. We're like Doom, just with stories, but don't change it or sell it. Theme music is by permission of Anders Manga. Join us next week for more true stories. In the meantime, PseudoPod wants you to remember, brand new again in a world that's shattered. I'm feeling better than I thought I can. We'll see you next time, folks. Until then, have fun.
When you listen to a narrator or let yourself go into a story, you are letting yourself go into the car of a stranger. You are getting into the car of a stranger. You are walking in the front door of someone you do not know.
It's a PseudoPod. It's a big foot.
It's all about podcasts these days.